them!
Everyone down, now!
No!
Get back, they're everywhere!
There's a sniper on the roof, the fat waitress whispered, and the room kept laughing, because nobody believed a woman carrying dessert trays could see death before trained guards did. Isabella Reed stood behind the champagne tower, her lush, generous curves wrapped in a navy uniform designed to hide more than serve, while New York's richest criminals toasted under crystal chandeliers. The man beside her, Luca Verone, did not look up at first. He merely owned the building, the restaurant, the security company, and half the men pretending to protect him. Then a red dot slid across his cuff. Some kings hear warnings too late. Luca heard one from a waitress everyone had dismissed. Isabella Reed had come to the Verone Tower that night to serve roasted figs, truffle risotto, and glasses of champagne. She could never afford not to stop a murder. She was 28, beautifully plus size, and tired of men calling her soft as if softness meant stupid. Her secret was not strength with fists, but vision. Years before, her father had taught rooftop surveillance for federal agents before one corrupted case destroyed him. Isabella learned angles, reflections, blind spots, and the language of men who thought distance made them invisible. When she whispered about the sniper, she did not know Luca Verone was the shadow king behind the whole glittering building. The charity dinner on the 71st floor was supposed to honor children's hospitals, but the guest list read like a peace treaty written in diamonds and threats. Politicians smiled beside shipping heirs. Judges accepted tiny desserts from men whose cases vanished too easily. Isabella moved through them with a silver tray balanced on one palm, taking up space unapologetically, even while her manager hissed that she should keep to the wall. The skyline burned beyond the glass. All black water and gold windows, while a string quartet played sweet music over dangerous conversations. She noticed everything. The locked service door held one fresh scratch. The east balcony camera tilted 3 degrees low. A waiter she did not know wore shoes too clean for kitchen work. She noticed, because noticing had once been survival. Her father, Daniel Reed, had raised her in Queens after her mother left, bringing home cheap noodles, old binoculars, and stories about how buildings told the truth before people did. He had made games from observation. Count exits. Find the nearest reflection. Tell me which hand the man favors. Isabella loved those games until the scandal came. Daniel testified against a private security contractor tied to organized crime, then died in a car explosion the police called mechanical failure. After that, Isabella stopped speaking about sightlines and angles. She served tables. She paid rent. She carried the fullness she owned with quiet confidence, even when the world mistook quiet for permission. Her manager, Preston Vale, never missed a chance to remind her that confidence offended him. He was slender, polished, and cruel, in the way weak men became when given a clipboard and authority over schedules. Smile less wide, he muttered as she passed the kitchen doors. Guests can see you from across the room. Isabella kept walking. That is useful when they need drinks. Preston stepped closer, blocking her path with a tray of empty flutes. Do not be clever. Tonight matters. The Verone family is here, and I will not have my floor ruined by a fat waitress waddling into photographs. The words struck in the open sharp enough that 2 junior servers froze. Isabella felt the old heat climb her neck, heavy and humiliating. A busboy looked down at his shoes. The pastry chef pretended to reorganize spoons. Across the marble floor, wealthy guests laughed at something unrelated, but the cruelty still seemed loud enough to fill the service corridor. She wanted to answer. She wanted to tell Preston that a man who measured women by width usually had nothing deeper to measure. Instead, she swallowed it because rent was due. Her younger brother needed tuition, money, and jobs vanished faster than dignity recovered. I understand, she said. Preston smiled like he had won. Good. Keep your big body behind pillars, Isabella. Nobody came here to watch you move. The man in the bespoke charcoal suit heard only the last line. Luca Verone stood near the private elevator, with his consigliere Marco Bellini one hand around an untouched glass of mineral water. He had the chiseled jawline of a marble saint and the dark, predatory calm of a man who could bankrupt a city block before breakfast. Conversations near him always thinned. People lowered voices without knowing why. Isabella had served him twice that evening without recognizing him. Because power did not wear name tags, and the restaurant staff had been told only that Mr. Verone was not to be bothered. His obsidian eyes shifted toward Preston, then toward Isabella, and the air seemed to drop 10 degrees. Luca did not interfere. Not yet. He had spent a lifetime learning when silence revealed more than action. He watched the waitress lower her eyes, watched her fingers tighten around the silver tray, and watched Preston swagger away with a coward's satisfaction. Most people crumpled after public cruelty. Isabella did not. She stood still for one breath, gathered the pieces of herself without anyone's help, and returned to the ballroom as if nothing had cut her. That discipline interested him. The shape of her interested him, too lush and soft and alive beneath the ugly navy uniform, but it was her eyes that held him. They never rested. They mapped mirrors, glass balconies, exits, and rooftops. Isabella reached table 12, just as Senator Harlan Crane raised his glass to propose a toast. Crane had once praised her father on television, then disappeared from the investigation file 2 weeks before Daniel died. She recognized him instantly, though grief had changed the memory into something colder. His hair had gone silver, his smile remained expensive, and a small triangular scar still marked his chin. Isabella's hand tightened around the bottle. The senator looked through her as if waitstaff were weather. Beside him sat Vanessa Crane, his daughter draped in ice blue satin and contempt, watching Isabella with the bored cruelty of a woman trained to wound softly. "More champagne," Vanessa said, "and try not to breathe over it." The table laughed. Isabella poured without spilling. Then the glass wall behind Vanessa caught a reflection from the opposite tower, a brief blink of white light, where there should have been only dark offices. Isabella's breath stopped. The reflection vanished, returned, then shifted along a diagonal that crossed Luca Verone's position near the central dais. Her father's voice rose inside her with terrible clarity. "Light lies only when glass bends it. Men hide where comfort makes you stop looking." Isabella turned her head by inches, scanning the skyline, the maintenance ledge above the restaurant, sign the rooftop garden 2 buildings away. There, a shadow where no shadow belonged. A human stillness, too deliberate to be architecture. She moved before fear could persuade her into silence. Her tray landed on the service station with a soft clatter, and she crossed toward Luca through the crowd as Senator Crane began speaking about generosity, legacy, and civic responsibility. Preston saw her leave position and hissed her name. Isabella ignored him. The red targeting dot flickered again, almost invisible, against Luca's white cuff. His guards looked outward at the room, not upward at the glass. Of course they did. Security watched doors because danger usually had manners. Isabella stepped beside Luca close enough to smell cedarwood clean wool and the faint metallic charge of concealed violence. "There's a sniper on the roof," she whispered. "Move now, or die politely." Luca's eyes lowered to her face, not startled, not grateful, just instantly alert. Which roof? His gravelly baritone did not rise, but it sliced through the noise around them. Isabella pointed with 2 fingers hidden beneath a folded napkin. "West Tower maintenance ledge 3rd glass seam from the top. Shooter is using the speech reflection to mask movement." Marco's hand vanished beneath his jacket. Luca did not look away from Isabella. "How do you know?" "Because your guards are watching the floor, and the room behind your reflection has been empty for 20 minutes. The red dot slid from his cuff toward his throat. Isabella grabbed his sleeve and yanked with all her weight. The glass exploded. Screams tore the ballroom apart. Crystal shattered over marble like frozen rain. Luca moved with Isabella not because she overpowered him, but because he had the intelligence to obey accurate fear. The bullet struck the champagne tower, where his head had been sending gold liquid and shards across silk gowns. Guards surged in every direction. Guests dropped behind tables. The quartet stopped mid-note. Isabella hit the floor hard, her soft, round figure shielding a fallen hostess who was too terrified to crawl. Luca came down beside her, one arm braced above her head, his body becoming a wall between her and flying glass. "Second shot in 8 seconds, she gasped. "Shooter needs new angle." Luca snapped one command. Lights out. The ballroom plunged into emergency darkness, broken only by city glow and red exit signs. Men shouted into radios. Someone sobbed beside the dessert table. Isabella stayed low, breathing dust and champagne, while Luca's hand closed around her wrist with an iron grip that was surprisingly gentle. "Look at me," he murmured. She did, against every instinct telling her to run. His dark eyes were not panicked. They were fiercely intelligent and terrifyingly alive. "Tell me what you see." Isabella swallowed hard. If he stays outside, he lost the shot. If he has a second team, they will enter through service routes during the chaos. Luca's mouth curved without warmth. "Marco, already moving," the older man replied from the shadows. Preston crawled from behind a table, white-faced and furious, in the wrong direction. "Isabella, what have you done? You abandoned your station. You caused panic." She stared at him, stunned. Even with glass on the floor and blood on a guest's cheek, he cared about blame. "Someone fired a shot," she said. Preston grabbed her arm. "You are finished. I told them you were unstable. Always staring, always imagining things. Who would believe a fat waitress over trained security?" The words landed in darkness, but not privately. Luca stood slowly. Around them, guards, donors, and fallen guests fell silent as the most dangerous man in the building turned his head. "Take your hand off her," Luca said. He did not shout. He did not need to. Preston released Isabella as if burned. The air changed. Everyone felt it. The crowd that had ignored her body, her voice, and her warning now watched Luca Veroni place himself beside her, with calm, lethal precision. Mr. Verone Preston stammered, finally recognizing the owner of his fear. "I was only trying to control staff." Luca looked at Isabella's reddened wrist, then at Preston. "You controlled nothing. You insulted the only person in this room who saw death coming." Preston's mouth opened. No sound came. Isabella's heart pounded harder than the shot had sounded. "You own the building." Isabella breathed, the realization arriving late and humiliating. Luca's gaze returned to her, and something almost like amusement flickered beneath the danger. "I own this building, the tower across from it, and the security firm that is now explaining why a waitress saved my life before they did." Isabella tried to pull away, but his grip tightened just enough to keep her grounded. "I need to check the kitchen staff," she whispered. "No. You need to stay where I can keep you alive. I am not your responsibility." Luca leaned closer, his voice becoming a low, lethal purr. "You became my responsibility the moment you put your body between my throat and a bullet." His words sent heat through the cold shock in her veins, and Isabella hated that part of her wanted to believe them. She had seen men weaponize gratitude before. Preston used favors like hooks. Senator Crane used charity like a mask. Even her father's old agency had praised loyalty until loyalty became inconvenient. "I warned you because I saw the shot," she said. "Not because I wanted protection from a man like you." Luca's expression sharpened. "A man like me. A man everyone fears, but nobody names." A sudden stillness fell between them, louder than sirens. Luca studied her face as if deciding whether truth offended him or entertained him. "Luca Veroni said, 'Now you can name me properly.'" The name hit her with delayed force. Verone meant ports, glass towers, private clubs, judges who resigned, early rivals who went quiet, and a family empire polite newspapers called complicated. Isabella had served canapes to the most powerful crime boss in New York and pulled him away from a sniper without realizing she had touched a king. She tried to step back again. This time he let her, but only by 1 inch. "Do not run," he warned softly. "Running makes frightened men useful to my enemies. Your enemies are not mine." Luca's eyes dropped briefly to the cuts on her hand, then lifted with dark certainty. "They are now. That shooter missed me because of you. Failure seeks someone to punish." The service corridor became a temporary command center within minutes. Luca's men moved with frightening silence, sealing elevators, checking staff badges, pulling camera feeds across tablet screens. Isabella sat on an overturned crate, while a medic cleaned glass from her palm. She tried not to shake. She failed. Luca noticed, of course. Men like him noticed cracks the way architects noticed load-bearing walls. "Who taught you sightlines?" he asked. Isabella looked away. "Nobody. You just invented rooftop surveillance between serving champagne and dodging bullets." His voice was dry, dangerous, almost amused. She closed her fist around the bandage. "My father trained federal observation teams." Daniel Reed. Luca's expression changed so quickly she almost missed it. Recognition. Then something darker. "Your father was Daniel Reed." The question opened a hidden door inside the night. Isabella felt cold move beneath her skin. "You knew him?" Luca did not answer quickly enough. Marco looked up from the security feed. Preston, cuffed near the pantry after attempting to leave, suddenly went very still. Senator Crane's voice echoed from the ballroom, demanding evacuation privileges and police discretion. Isabella heard all of it, yet Luca's silence frightened her most. "I knew of him," he said at last. He was honest in a room where honesty was expensive. Isabella laughed, once broken and bitter. "That sounds like something rich men say after honest men die." Luca accepted the hit without flinching. "It is." Before she could answer, Marco turned the tablet toward them. The shooter had entered the West Tower using a badge issued by Crane Security Holdings. Senator Harlan Crane. The name locked into the room like a second bullet. Isabella stared at the tablet, at the timestamp, at the logo that had once appeared in her father's case files. Preston began sweating. Luca looked at him, and the manager shrank. "You hired 3 extra temporary servers tonight," Luca said. Preston shook his head too fast. "I followed instructions from event coordination." "From whom?" Marco asked. Preston's eyes flicked toward the ballroom, toward Crane. Isabella saw it. Luca saw her see it. "Tell me," Luca murmured. Preston swallowed. "The senator's office requested staffing changes. I did not ask questions." Isabella stood ignoring the medic's protest. "My father was investigating Crane Security when he died." Luca's face went dangerously blank. "Then this was not only about me," he said. Isabella understood at the same moment. The sniper's shot had been aimed at Luca, but the building, the timing, and the charity event created a perfect storm of witnesses' blame and cleanup. If Luca died inside his own tower, every rival moved. If Isabella vanished into staff confusion after warning him no one would connect Daniel Reed's daughter to the old scandal. The first secret was no longer buried. It had a face, a senator's smile, and a body count disguised as civic service. "I need to leave," Isabella whispered. Luca stepped between her and the corridor. "Absolutely not. My brother is home alone." His expression shifted. "Address." "No, Isabella." Her name in his voice felt like a command wrapped in velvet. She hated how safe it sounded. "My brother is 16, she snapped. "He has nothing to do with your war." Luca's jaw tightened. "If Crane knows who you are, he has everything to do with it. Give Marco the address, or I will find it in 30 seconds and offend you while saving him." The arrogance should have enraged her. It did. The accuracy terrified her more. She gave the address. Marco made one call quiet and immediate. Luca removed his jacket and draped it over Isabella's shoulders before she could refuse. It was warm, heavy cedarwood, and danger sinking into the navy uniform. "Do not mistake protection for ownership," she whispered. Luca's eyes darkened. "Do not mistake my possession of a building for my understanding of a woman. I am learning the difference tonight." The evacuation turned into theater because Luca wanted witnesses. He walked Isabella back into the damaged ballroom on his arm, past shattered crystal, trembling donors and security men who could not meet his gaze. Conversation sputtered out. Eyes widened. The crowd physically parted. Isabella felt every stare strike her curves, her uniform, the bandage around her palm, the mafia boss's jacket over her shoulders. For once, nobody smirked. Vanessa Crane saw them first and went pale beneath perfect makeup. Senator Crane stopped arguing with an officer and turned slowly. His public smile returned by instinct, but it did not reach the scar on his chin. "Mr. Verone," he called. "What a terrible incident. Thank God your staff acted quickly." Luca guided Isabella directly toward him. "Not my staff," Luca replied softly. "Her." The ballroom held its breath. Senator Crane's gaze flicked to Isabella, recognition hiding behind politeness. Of course. Miss Reed, Isabella said. Isabella Reed. The senator's smile cracked by a hair. Vanessa noticed. Luca noticed. The entire room seemed to lean closer without moving. Daniel Reed's daughter, Isabella, continued. You praised him once on television. Right before you forgot his name in court. Crane's eyes cooled. This is hardly the moment for old grievances. Luca's hand settled at Isabella's lower back, not pushing, simply present. It is exactly the moment, he said. His quiet voice reached every corner. A sniper used your company's badge to access a roof across from my property. Explain that before the police do. Crane recovered with impressive speed. That was what made him dangerous. My company provides thousands of badges. Criminal misuse happens. Surely you understand criminal misuse, Mr. Varone. A ripple moved through the room. The insult was elegant, wrapped in law and reputation. Luca smiled faintly. Careful, Senator. I am excellent at surviving accusations. You are less experienced at surviving evidence. Vanessa stepped forward, voice sugary and sharp. Is everyone really going to trust the word of a waitress who probably wanted attention? She looks like she could barely carry trays, let alone identify a sniper. The old humiliation tried to rise. This time Isabella did not lower her eyes. Luca turned his head toward Vanessa, and the room felt 20 degrees colder. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me, Luca said. And unlike Miss Reed, I am not merciful by profession. Vanessa's mouth closed. Her father placed a controlling hand on her arm. Too late. The crowd had seen enough. Isabella felt the shift, not only fear of Luca but recognition of herself. She had spoken. She had not crumpled. She had named a dead father in front of a senator and a crime boss, and the ceiling had not fallen. Preston, dragged into the ballroom by 2 guards, chose the worst moment to plead. Mr. Varone, I can explain. She has always been dramatic. I tried to keep her hidden because guests complained. Luca's eyes did not leave Crane. Marco reminded Miss Vale what happens to men who hide diamonds because they prefer dust. Marco inclined his silver head. Gladly. Preston was removed with humiliating efficiency, not beaten, not bloodied, simply stripped of authority in front of every server he had bullied. Luca then turned to the head of restaurant operations. Miss Reed's employment record will be corrected. Her wages doubled. Her manager replaced before dawn. Isabella stiffened. I did not ask for that. Luca looked down at her. No, you earned it before tonight. I am merely catching up. The words caught her somewhere vulnerable. She hated the public nature of them, yet needed the correction more than pride wanted to admit. Senator Crane watched the exchange with eyes that had stopped pretending warmth. You are making a mistake, Mr. Varone. Luca's smile sharpened. I prefer consequences over warnings. The next 48 hours arrived in layers of ruin. First came the shooter captured by Luca's men in a laundry truck 2 blocks from the West Tower and delivered alive to authorities with camera footage, badge logs, and enough names to make prosecutors salivate. Then came Crane Security Holdings, whose private contracts froze overnight after anonymous compliance reports appeared in federal inboxes. Luca never explained how he obtained them. Isabella watched from a safe apartment above one of his quiet restaurants surrounded by guards she had negotiated down from 12 to 4. Her brother Noah played video games in the next room, pretending not to be scared. Every news alert on Isabella's phone felt like a door opening into her father's grave. Second came Preston's fall, smaller but satisfying, in a way Isabella did not expect. 3 former servers filed complaints after Luca's auditors found hidden wage deductions, harassment notes, and altered schedules used to punish anyone who challenged him. Preston's apartment lease turned out to depend on a restaurant discount he had abused. His professional references evaporated before lunch. By evening, he had left Isabella 8 voicemails, each one shrinking from accusation to panic to pleading. She deleted them without listening to the end. That surprised her. Once she would have needed every apology like water. Now she felt absolutely nothing but tired pity. Men like Preston built little kingdoms from cruelty because they knew they would never survive in larger wars. Third, came Vanessa Crane. Her social charity foundation lost donors when footage leaked of her calling Isabella attention-seeking during an assassination investigation. The clip spread across every network by breakfast. By noon, sponsors pulled from her gala season. By dinner, Vanessa appeared outside Verone Tower with sunglasses, a lawyer, and trembling lips demanding to speak to Isabella. Luca refused at first. Isabella overruled him. They met in a closed dining room with Marco by the door, and Luca standing near the window like a storm in human form. Vanessa looked smaller without an audience. "I was frightened," she said. "I said something cruel." Isabella studied the woman who had weaponized elegance. "You said what you already believed. Fear only made you honest." Vanessa flinched because truth had no designer wrapping. Forth came Crane himself, and his collapse was slower, uglier, and more dangerous. He denied everything on morning television, calling the sniper a lone extremist and Isabella a confused service worker caught in trauma. He made the mistake of mentioning Daniel Reed by name, describing him as troubled, obsessive, and dismissed from federal circles for cause. Isabella heard it from Luca's office, where she had been reviewing old floor plans to help locate the shooter's support team. The words hollowed her out. Luca watched her face change and turned off the screen. "Do not let him make your father small." She laughed bitterly. "He already did. Years ago." Luca crossed the room, not touching until she allowed it. "Then we make the truth larger." The simplicity of it nearly broke her. Truth came from a storage unit Isabella had avoided for 6 years. Her father's old boxes waited under dust and grief, filled with notebooks, maps, photographs, and coded symbols she had once considered paranoid scribbles. Luca took her there himself, despite Marco's objections. The unit smelled of cardboard, old coffee, and rain trapped in concrete. Isabella stood frozen at the entrance, until Luca's large, calloused hand settled gently around hers. "You do not have to do this alone." "I have done everything alone. I know," he murmured. "That is why I am asking, not ordering." That mattered. She hated that it mattered. Together, they opened the boxes and found the second secret hidden inside a hollowed-out surveillance manual, a drive marked with Luca Verone's name. For one terrible moment, Isabella thought her father had been investigating Luca too. Luca's face gave nothing away, but Marco, standing behind them, inhaled once too sharply. The drive contained old footage from 6 years earlier, Senator Crane meeting private contractors, Preston much younger and nervous, and a Verone family lawyer handing over sealed papers. Isabella's stomach turned. "Did your family bury my father's case?" Luca took the blow without defending himself. "My father ran the family then. I was in Sicily burying my brother." "That is not an answer." "No," he said quietly. "It is not." Her chest hurt with the force of betrayal arriving before love had even named itself. She stepped back. "You knew there was a connection. I suspected. I did not know this." "That is convenient." Her voice shook. Luca's eyes darkened, not with anger at her, but with something that looked painfully close to shame. "Yes." The honesty stole momentum from her fury, but not the wound. "You used me," Isabella whispered. "You protected me because I was useful against Crane." Luca moved one step closer, then stopped when she stiffened. "I protected you because you saved my life. I listened because you were right. I want Crane destroyed because he tried to kill me, yes. But I want your father cleared because he deserved better than men like mine, and men like Crane deciding what truth was worth." Isabella turned away before tears could fall. "I need air." This time Luca let her leave. That was how she knew he was trying to change. Crane struck back before dawn, not with a bullet, with custody. 2 uniformed officers arrived at the safe apartment carrying a warrant to question Isabella about evidence tampering, claiming the old drive had been stolen from a federal archive. Noah panicked. The guards reached for phones. Isabella went very still. The officers were real, but their nervousness was wrong. Badges legitimate, eyes evasive. One kept glancing at the stairwell camera that Luca's team had installed yesterday. Her father's lesson returned with brutal calm. Real authority does not need to rush fear. Isabella asked for the warrant number, smiled politely, and spilled coffee across the paper while photographing the seal. The ink blurred in one corner, where real court stamps never bled. Forged. She did not fight them. She outread them. "Noah, call Marco," she said, keeping her voice steady. One officer stepped forward. Isabella backed toward the kitchen, pulling a heavy cast-iron pan from the drying rack as if clearing space. "Ma'am, put that down. Gladly, after you explain why your forged warrant carries yesterday's notary code." The officer's face changed. That was confession enough. When he lunged, Isabella slammed the pan into his wrist, used her body's solid center to block his momentum, and drove him into the refrigerator. The second officer reached for Noah. Isabella grabbed a bag of flour from the counter and hurled it into his face. It burst white across the room. Marco arrived with guards before the flour settled. Luca arrived 3 minutes later, no Thai fury barely leashed beneath a black coat. He found Isabella sitting on the kitchen floor, Noah clinging to her forged officers restrained near the hallway. Flour covered her hair, her navy sweater, and the magnificent slope of her hips like battle snow. She looked up, breathing hard. They interrupted breakfast. Marco's mouth twitched. Luca did not smile. He crouched before her, his dark and fathomless eyes searching her face. "Are you hurt?" "No." Noah scared. Luca looked at the boy. "You did well." Noah blinked, surprised by praise from a man who looked like a funeral with cheekbones. Isabella let out a shaky laugh despite herself. Luca's gaze returned to her. "You saved him." "I saw the seal," she whispered. "My father used to make me compare documents when I was bored." Luca's expression shifted into reverence so intense it frightened her more than his rage. "Your father raised a weapon with a waitress tray. Do not call me a weapon." "Then, what should I call you?" She looked down at the flour on her hands, the scratches, the evidence of panic she had survived. "A woman who wants her life back." Luca nodded slowly. "Then we take it back publicly." The next day he arranged a press conference in the Verone Tower lobby, but Isabella refused to stand behind him like rescued property. She wore her own black dress, her own shoes, and no borrowed jacket. Luca saw the choice and approved without speaking. The lobby filled with reporters, police, lawyers, donors, and vultures wearing perfume. Senator Crane arrived because arrogance often mistook visibility for control. He expected Luca to accuse him. He expected the mafia boss to look criminal beside his senatorial polish. Instead, Isabella stepped to the microphone first. Conversation sputtered out. Cameras shifted. The crowd physically parted around her voice before she said a word. "My name is Isabella Reed," she began. 6 years ago. My father died after gathering evidence against Crane Security Holdings. 2 nights ago, a shooter used a Crane badge to target Mr. Verone from a roof I could see through a reflection. Yesterday, men with forged warrants tried to take me from my home. Today, I am done being called confused. She played the footage. Not all of it. Enough. Crane's smile died as Daniel Reed's voice filled the lobby from the old recording, calm and exhausted, naming dates, accounts, and threats. Then came images of Crane with contractors' altered badge logs and the forged warrant seal Isabella had caught. Reporters erupted. Crane tried to leave, but Luca's men did not touch him. They did not need to. Federal agents entered through the north doors with real paperwork and expressions that suggested patience had ended. Isabella watched the senator's face collapse in layers. First, disbelief, then calculation, then fear. He looked at her once, and for the first time he truly saw the waitress he had ignored. She was not weather. She was consequence. Luca stood beside her, not in front. That mattered most. When reporters shouted questions about his family's old lawyer, he did not hide. "My father's administration buried evidence," he said into the microphones, voice steady and lethal. "That corruption ends under me. The Reed family will receive every document we have." Marco beside him looked as if watching a dynasty cut out its own rot. Isabella turned to Luca, stunned. Public confession cost men like him more than money. He met her gaze without flinching. "Truth larger," he murmured, using her words back like a vow. Something inside her softened despite every warning she had ever made against powerful men. Not forgiveness yet. Something more dangerous. Possibility. After the arrests, Luca sent no flowers. He sent her father's case file in a sealed leather box along with a handwritten note. "You deserved truth before gifts. Dinner only if you choose. Under it lay a ruby-red dress, structured and elegant, designed to celebrate, not conceal. Isabella stared at it for 10 minutes. Noah leaned over the couch, grinning. The scary building guy has taste. The scary building guy is a mafia boss. He also admitted his family messed up on live television for you. For the truth. Noah shrugged. Same direction. Isabella threw a pillow at him and failed to hide her smile. At 8, she chose the red dress because choice had become the only gift she trusted. The private dinner waited on the rooftop garden of Verone Tower, the same building where glass had exploded 2 nights before. Now the shattered windows were replaced, the city glittered below, and winter roses bloomed beneath heated lanterns. Luca stood by the railing in a masterfully tailored midnight blue suit, broad shoulders outlined against Manhattan's lights. When Isabella stepped out of the elevator, his breath visibly caught. The ruby fabric moved over her lush curves like flame-learning devotion. Her curves were engineered for silk and power, and the dress knew it. "You look." Luca stopped, jaw tight. No, words would make it smaller. Isabella's cheeks warmed. "That may be the first wise thing you have said." His mouth curved. "I'm improving." Dinner was cacio e pepe, with black truffle sea base under lemon butter roasted pears with honey and espresso dark enough to resurrect secrets. Luca asked about Daniel, about Noah, about the first time Isabella understood buildings better than people. He listened without stealing the answer. She asked about his brother, and grief moved across his face like weather he had never permitted indoors. "I became boss by surviving what should have killed me," he admitted. "Then I treated survival like virtue." Isabella set down her glass. "Survival is not virtue, it is evidence." He looked at her for a long moment. Of what? That something still wants to live. The words hung between them, tender and terrible. Marco interrupted near dessert, escorting Preston Vale onto the rooftop between 2 security men. The former manager looked ruined in the dull way petty tyrants did when stripped of keys and name badges. He came to the service entrance, asking to speak with Miss Reed, Marco said. Preston's eyes darted between the red dress, Luca's stillness, and Isabella's calm face. "Please," he began. "I was under pressure. Crane's people told me to keep you away from guests because they knew who your father was. I did not know about the sniper. I swear." Isabella studied him and felt the last knot of humiliation loosen. "You enjoyed it," she said softly. Preston cried then, not from remorse, from exposure. "I can't get hired anywhere." Luca's expression went cold enough to frost the lanterns, but Isabella lifted one hand. "No," she said. "He is mine to answer." Preston stared up at her, suddenly understanding that the woman he had hidden behind pillars now decided how much mercy reached him. "You called me fat because you thought my body made me powerless," she continued. "But my body carried trays through your cruelty, shielded a hostess from glass, held my brother steady, and stood at a microphone while better-dressed cowards shook. You were never bigger than me, Preston. You were only louder." Preston lowered his head. "I am sorry." Isabella breathed in cold air and expensive coffee. "Good. Carry that somewhere useful." Marco removed him. Luca watched her like a man seeing a crown placed by invisible hands. "Absolutely nothing but pity," she murmured half to herself. Luca stepped closer. "For him, for everyone who thought making me smaller would make them powerful." The rooftop quieted around them, city wind moving through winter roses. Luca reached for her hand, then stopped short, waiting. Isabella noticed the pause, the restraint, the effort from a man built to command. She gave him her fingers. His large, calloused hand closed around them, warm despite the cold. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked. The question had no audience now. No cameras, no guards close enough to pretend they were not listening. Isabella thought of shattered glass, buried files, forged warrants, ruby silk, and the way he had stepped aside so she could speak. "No," she whispered. Relief moved through him like pain leaving a wound. "Good," he breathed. "Because from this night forward, anyone who makes you feel less than magnificent will face the fire, including the man I used to be." Isabella's throat tightened. "I am not your prize because I saved you." "No," Luca said. You are not my prize, my secret, my weakness, or my debt. You are the woman who saw death in a reflection and still chose to warn me. You are the daughter of a man my world failed. The sister who stood between forged badges and a boy. The waitress who became a witness and the queen. I will spend my life earning, if you let me stand beside you. His voice broke on the last word, just slightly. Enough. Isabella lifted her free hand to his chest, feeling the hard living beat beneath bespoke fabric. Beside me, she said. Not in front. Luca covered her hand with his. Beside you. The kiss came slowly. Not as conquest, not as payment, but as a promise laid carefully, where fear used to live. She rose into it because she chose to, because ruby silk felt like fire around her body, because the city below had tried to swallow her father's truth and failed. Luca held her like a man who finally understood that owning buildings meant nothing beside earning trust. The sniper had aimed from above. Isabella Reed had looked higher. That was how a waitress saved a king, and became the reason his empire learned to kneel. Did you love seeing Isabella rise from mocked waitress to the woman who exposed a senator, saved a mafia boss, and reclaimed her father's truth? Hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe for more. Drop a comment below telling us whether Luca deserved Isabella's trust after his family's past was revealed. Would you have trusted him after learning the Verone Empire helped bury Daniel Reed's evidence? Or would you have walked away in the ruby dress and left the king to earn forgiveness from a distance?